Segment 3, Golden Black Live, joined by Brian Newbert, who covers a thing called Purdue men's basketball for us, among other things, many other things. And he'll be making the trip for tomorrow's matchup against Arkansas as the Boilermakers take on the Razorbacks at a 4:00 Eastern exhibition game. Seems more than that. We'll hit that topic as well, but even though it probably shouldn't be more than an exhibition game, I believe you can watch on SEC Plus if you get the chance to tune in. There's some information on that as well as we look forward to it. All right, Brian, I know it's an exhibition game. We know Purdue fans' wonderful characteristic of overreacting to things, but it is an interesting matchup. You've got a 14th ranked preseason, 14th ranked Arkansas team, a team that's done well in the NCAA tournament under Eric Musselman and company, and a Purdue team that's really loaded and yet has some things to prove as it moves into the 23-24 season. How do you going to look at this game as Purdue takes on Arkansas tomorrow afternoon?
Yeah, I think all fan bases, not just Purdue's, tend to overvalue these sorts of outcomes. So it wouldn't just be about Purdue overreacting if they lose.
Yeah.
But I don't think it, one of the big questions for me going into this is, does Purdue coach to win?
Yeah.
The dirty little secret of these preseason events sometimes is that coaches would almost rather their teams lose. That doesn't mean they tank them. That doesn't mean they don't try to put their teams in the best position to win, but they also don't pull out all the stops to win, because it really doesn't matter. It's all about the experience. And I think this is a much better experience for Purdue than it would be if they were playing this thing in an empty gym somewhere. And, no one got to watch. I think putting Purdue in a real environment here is a great thing for them. One thing that Purdue has to respond well to this year is that same thing of the last 2 years when they were number one in the country, is when Purdue comes to your place with that very, very low number in front of its name, people are coming at your head and you got to be ready for it. And this game doesn't count, but this being a pretty big event at Arkansas, would seem to be the closest you're ever going to get in the preseason to simulating that sort of thing. So I think Purdue will want to win. You'd rather win than lose, obviously, if you're competitive. But I think Purdue could take more from a loss than they could from a win, to be honest with you. It's not the worst thing in the world to get humbled, too, if that's ever going to be an issue for Purdue. But, Matt Painter always tries to get something on the schedule early in the season that's going to really, really show Purdue some pressure, whether it be a full court press, whether it be a really aggressive defensive team. And that's typically what Arkansas does. So the guards are going to have to be ready. Knowing Eric Musselman, I think he'll probably really want to win this game. So they'll play this game like a regular season game. And they'll have a game plan for Zach Edey. I think he already said publicly that they went back and watched a video of Shaquille O'Neal to try to come up with some ideas. So we will see. This is a very different Arkansas team than last year. They don't have Nick Smith. They don't have Anthony Black, both in the NBA. But they're always going to have talent down there. They're always going to have athleticism. They're always going to have length, things like that. And, Purdue's going to have to be ready. This will be a great experience for Purdue. This will be a great experience for Arkansas. This is a much better developmental deal for both teams than it would be if they were just playing, Adams College or Faber College or something like that. So Purdue will leave Fayetteville a better team than they arrived as.
I think it's an interesting 17,000 fans for an exhibition game, and one that's going to an important cause too. And you're obviously going to be out in Hawaii and Honolulu because the Maui tournament is going to be in Maui this year, but extremely important cause from that standpoint. All right, there are tons of storylines when you have a team as talented as Purdue and has shown the defending Big Ten tournament and regular season champions. there you can start a number of different places in terms of things that you'll watch for. But I mean, Trey Kaufman-Renn and his role, Miles Colvin, Cam Heide, on down the line. What are some of the things that and yet you might expect Matt Painter to lengthen his bench a little bit for an exhibition game? Maybe Brian Waddell gets more time. I don't know. But what do you expect from that standpoint in terms of some of the things you'll be watching for?
Well, the biggest question for me is, as I just mentioned, does Purdue treat this like a real game? Does Painter coach this game like he will, Gonzaga in Hawaii? I don't know. This could just be a let's get everybody minutes and see what happens type of thing. But the things I guess I'd be most interested to see is just how he distributes the minutes, and that is not something that is going to be etched into stone tablets moving forward.
Yeah.
It's just an exhibition game. But, how does the Trey Kaufman-Renn, Zach Edey thing work together? Coaches express no concern over that whatsoever in terms of their ability to play together offensively. Defensively, there's going to be some complication there. The players are the ones who talk about the spacing. So it's going to be interesting to see how Trey Kaufman-Renn and Zach Edey coexist, how much Purdue goes with that lineup. I think they're probably going to start that way, but we'll see of the total 40 minutes, how many of those minutes are dedicated to that lineup. This could be a great opportunity for them to, even if it's not working, just make it work. Just play that way as much as you can, just to try to make it work. To just give it as much run as you possibly can to try to smooth out whatever you can in game-like conditions. I think it'll be interesting to see how Camden Heide, Miles Colvin, those guys, I guess, rise to the occasion, so to speak. That there's a lot to learn, especially for Colvin. There's a lot of roughness around the edges here that still has to be smoothed out. But basketball is basketball in certain senses, and how far along does he look in this sort of environment? This is, needless to say, Miles Colvin's never played in front of 17,000 people before. Camden Heide's never played in front of 17,000 people before. They are Arkansas level athletes. So how comfortable do they look out there? Do they look like they know what they're doing? Not just do they look like they know what they're doing, do they know what they're doing?
Yeah.
Lance Jones, I think, will be a plug and play guy, but still there's going to be some adjustment there for him. He's in a new situation. So how do the newcomers kind of look? Things like that. How does Purdue play when Zach Edey's out of the game?
Yeah.
If Caleb First is at center, does Purdue do things differently? Because they are two distinctly different players. And I actually, just to kind of get some perspective on the start of this season, I went back and watched the Duke game from last season last night again. And I think people forget how good Caleb First was in that game, how good Caleb First has been at times in his Purdue career. Has it been the case all the time? No, but I think when he's in at center, you can do more stuff in pick and roll, which isn't to say that they're not going to do a ton of pick and roll with Edey. You can do some things differently, from a defensive perspective in terms of being a little bit more dynamic in how you defend out on the perimeter, stuff like that. So I kind of want to see if Purdue has two different looks that they can go to, not proactively, because you want Zach Edey on the floor as much as you can have Zach Edey on the floor. It would be nonsense to, take him out of the game. So you could put in somebody who's not the National Player of the Year to do something different. But I'll be interested to see if Purdue does some things differently when Zach Edey's out. You're obviously not going to, when you have First in the game, you're probably going to play through. Assuming if Kaufman-Renn's at the 4, you're still playing through him like you did last year, most likely. But yeah, just kind of that, Braden Smith, this is going to be a big game for him. I think he was born in Arkansas.
Yeah.
Not that that's really all that big a deal from a competitive perspective, but it is an interesting storyline. But, Purdue wants him to take a big step this season, to be a more aggressive player as a scorer, to be a more commanding presence than he was last season, and he was pretty damn commanding last year. Purdue is going to ask much more of him this year than they did last year. And, when you're playing Arkansas, the point guard's always going to be under the microscope. And this will be a really interesting game for him, too. Shooting is obviously the biggest question for me going into the season. That sounds like such a trite thing to point out, but I don't put much stock in, like, it doesn't matter how you shoot in November. It matters how you shoot in January, February, March, and, people hope April. But you obviously want to see Purdue taking the right shots. You want to see Purdue generating the right shots, things like that. If you make them, awesome. But that doesn't guarantee you anything for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's going to be a work in progress, even for a team that's extremely skilled. A storyline that will be not writing itself, but maybe ever changing. When you talk about, you mentioned last week after the Fan Day event, Ethan Morton's role too, which is going to be a little bit different, it appears, and a guy that's also very seasoned, brings a lot to the table from a basketball IQ perspective. But talk about that in that role, maybe as backup point to what role do you see for Ethan here in 23-24?
Well, I think you see a little bit more of what made him successful as a sophomore this year. Remember, when he was a sophomore, he was coming off the bench and he was basically doing whatever Purdue needed him to do on the fly. Like if he needed somebody to come in and guard Marcus Carr, he did that. If he needed somebody to just make a spot up three, he did that. You just needed somebody out there to make good decisions and be a stabilizing force offensively in whatever position or role he might have been playing. He did that. Last year, they had two freshman guards. They put him out there to kind of counterweight their lack of experience with his experience, their lack of defensive, presence at that stage of their careers with his defensive presence. And it just, I'm not going to say he didn't do good things for Purdue last season. Obviously, they won 29 games with him playing 20-some minutes a game and stuff like that. But I think they asked a little more of him than they probably ideally would have preferred to. I think he's always been a very confidence-driven player, and I think once he started missing shots, it kind of got between his ears a little bit, and I think it's completely different now. I think his approach is going to be that he understands now that he's not going to play through his shooting. He's just going to go out there and he's going to go back to just however he can impact the game. He's going to be happy with that, and that's a hard thing for players because the one thing people focus on is shooting, and the ultimate demise of Purdue's season last season was tied to shooting. So when people look at players and people comment in the court of public opinion, whatever it might be about players, it's almost always tied to, are they making shots or are they not making shots? It's not tied to, that was a hell of a pass he made off of that closeout to create that second pass that led to the entry into Zach Edey for that dunk. That's not what people talk about. It's the zero-sum game of, did he make a shot or did he not make a shot? And I think that Ethan Morton sounds like he's going to put a lot less personal emphasis on that than he might have last season. I think that Purdue has some more options there at that three position. What they don't have is a lot of guards. So I think you're going to see him kind of slide more into that utility man guard role too, on top of what he plays on the wing, and that's going to create some versatility in that backcourt, create some depth in that backcourt, but also empower him a little bit. Last year, he was playing mostly without the ball in his hands. If he's playing, point guard, or if he's playing the two, he's going to have the ball in his hands. And that's what you saw Saturday in those scrimmages. You saw somebody who was in position to make plays with the ball and did a really good job with that and looked like a different dude in that role, as opposed to the guy who was kind of standing there thinking about everything that was happening around him, waiting for something to come to him as opposed to him being the one who's making things happen.
All right, excellent explanation, and it's an important thing to understand as you look at the 23-24 Purdue season. All right, Brian, thanks so much for your time. I want to thank the and also make sure you watch Purdue basketball daily, Brian's daily video. It's great stuff and getting great reaction. If you get the chance to join us on goldenblack.com, you can always subscribe as well. We appreciate that too. Triple X, want to thank them as our sponsor on the hill, but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. And State Farm agent Trent Johnson at trentismyagent.com. Well, thanks to Gordon Jackson and Mary and the gang at WLFI for all their help putting this show together. We'll be back next week prior to the Purdue-Michigan game. I know Chris Pelliadot from Purdue Athletics will be one of our guests, and we'll look forward to that as well. So have a great weekend, everybody, and thanks for taking the time to watch Golden Black Live, and we'll see you next week for more of the same. Take care, all.